My name is Sarah, and today I want to tell you about the nightmare my boyfriend Danny and I experienced in Red Ridge Forest. This happened about 6 months ago, but the memory is still so clear it feels like it happened just yesterday. Whenever I think about it, I get a chill down my spine, and the fear feels as real as ever. And the worst part is, I'm not even sure if I truly made it out. It all started as just a camping trip to try to repair our relationship. To be honest, at that time, things were not going well between Danny and me. The work and life pressures were pushing us apart. We barely spoke, like two isolated islands side by side, so we decided to go camping, hoping it would help us reconnect and bring back our happy memories. Danny wasn't too eager, but he agreed for my sake. We picked Red Ridge Forest in West Virginia. The scenery there was beautiful, untouched, and wild. There were rumors online about people disappearing there and old stories about the Red Ridge Guardian. The legend said the forest was a sacred place for the native people, with guardian spirits that protected the souls of those who had been disturbed. Over the centuries, there had been several mysterious disappearances in Red Ridge Forest. The stories were chilling, but we didn't take them seriously. Just silly stories meant to scare people. After all, such stories are common in remote nature reserves. Ghosts, mysterious guardians, things like that. So common it was almost laughable. We brought a tent, sleeping bags, a camp stove, plenty of food and water, and a camera. That was my idea. I thought maybe recording our camping trip might help repair our relationship. I liked capturing those real and beautiful moments on camera, maybe because I still hope for them. The day we entered Red Ridge Forest, the weather was surprisingly nice. The sky was a deep blue, and the gentle mountain breeze was refreshing. We drove down the dirt road along the edge of the forest, then parked the car. Then we put on our backpacks and started hiking into the woods. I walked ahead with the camera hanging around my neck, sometimes recording Danny and the scenery around us. Danny walked quickly, like he just wanted to get it over with. He chose what looked like a shortcut, taking us down some unmarked trails. As we moved deeper into the forest, we saw an old sign painted in faded red letters, Red Ridge Guardian. The sign looked like it was warning people away, standing alone among scattered rocks, seemingly untouched for years. I stopped to take a few pictures and asked Danny if he knew what it meant. He just shrugged and said, "Probably just some silly legend, don't worry about it." The sign made me uneasy, like it was warning us we were entering somewhere we didn't belong. I tried to push the feeling away. After all, we were here to enjoy a vacation, not to star in a horror movie. By the time we reached the campsite, the sun was setting behind the mountains. Danny set up the tent while I placed the camera on a raised rock, adjusting the angle to record us making dinner by the fire. Suddenly, I heard some soft noises from the woods, like someone stepping on dry leaves. I turned to look but saw nothing. Probably just animals. I told myself to stay calm. But that night, things got stranger. As the night grew darker, the silence around us became overwhelming. Except for the crackling of the campfire and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind, there was no other sound. Danny, sitting next to me, looked sleepy, his eyes barely open. I picked up the camera, planning to record a nighttime campfire video, but when I looked through the screen, I saw a figure. Someone was standing at the edge of our campsite wearing a tattered cloak. Their face was completely hidden in the darkness. I gasped, quickly raising my head to look, but there was no one there. My reaction startled Danny, and he asked what was wrong. I told him what I saw, but he just laughed, saying I was too nervous and it was probably just a trick of the light. I didn't want to look at the camera anymore. Thinking back to the old sign, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Danny said we were tired after a long day and needed some rest, so I forced myself to go to sleep. But all night, I kept hearing faint footsteps outside the tent, and I lay there terrified. The next morning, Danny was up early. He seemed full of energy, like nothing had happened. I, on the other hand, felt exhausted. Still, I didn't want to seem weak, so we decided to keep moving after breakfast, trying to get as far away as possible from that strange figure. But it wasn't that simple. We walked for hours that day, but we couldn't find the route we planned. The compass stopped working. It felt like we were trapped in some kind of loop. No matter which way we went, we always ended up back at the campsite. I started to panic, and Danny grew more and more frustrated. We started arguing about which way to go. Then suddenly, a thick fog rolled in, like the entire forest was wrapped in a heavy white blanket. Danny insisted on finding a way out and walked into the fog without looking back. I called after him, but he didn't seem to hear me, his figure disappearing quickly into the dense fog. I tried to follow, but the fog grew thicker, and soon his shape faded completely into the mist. Fear took over, and I picked up the camera to see if I could find him. Through the camera, I saw a blurry shadow that looked like Danny, but something was off. His movements were stiff, like he wasn't in control of his own body. The sight on the screen sent chills down my spine. The shadow got closer, silently, like it was floating in the fog. His face twisted into an eerie smile, like he was trying to mimic Danny. Fear hit me like a wave, and I realized that wasn't Danny. It was something pretending to be him. When I looked up again, there was nothing there. When I replayed the footage, all I saw was thick fog and trees. I was terrified. In that moment, I knew I had to get out of there. I remembered why we came, to fix our relationship, but that no longer mattered. All I could think of was escaping. I started packing up frantically, but just then Danny returned. He had a smile I had never seen before, empty and unfamiliar. He walked towards me and said softly, "We belong here, don't we?" A wave of terror hit me. I raised the camera towards him, and through the screen, Danny's figure started to distort, like he was blending into the fog. I screamed at him to stay away, but he kept coming closer. I thought I was doomed. I almost gave up, but then I remembered the camera's flash. I pressed the flash repeatedly, and the bright light made the fake Danny squint and step back. The smile disappeared, replaced by pure rage. He let out a growl, like a beast, mixed with a deep, ancient wail, and it felt like the whole forest was responding to his anger. I grabbed my backpack and ran towards the area with less fog. Behind me, I heard the fake Danny screaming, his voice turning from human to something monstrous. I ran with everything I had until I was exhausted, and finally, I saw the parking area. I jumped into the car, started the engine, and drove off without looking back. As I left the forest, I glanced in the rearview mirror. At the campsite, I saw 2 Dannys. One was waving at me, and the other stood still in the fog, watching me leave. I don't know if I really escaped that day or if I'm still the same person who walked out. Once I reached the parking area, I called the police, but because it was such a remote location, it took a while for help to arrive. I had to drive back to town by myself, and only then did the police take over. I handed them the footage from the camera, hoping it would be useful evidence. At first, they doubted my story, but after seeing the blurry, unnatural figures in the video, they started to realize it wasn't that simple. They asked for more details and sent a team to Red Ridge Forest to investigate. A few days later, they told me they found some traces of our campsite, and they also found strange symbols carved into the old trees, like some kind of ancient symbols, but nothing else. All these clues couldn't explain Danny's disappearance. The police recorded Danny as missing, but without more evidence. The investigation hit a dead end. A few weeks later, I got a letter with no return address. Inside was just a photo. It showed the campsite at Red Ridge Forest, with me and 2 Dannys standing by the campfire. Both Dannys had the same twisted smile. I felt a chill all over my body and immediately took the letter and photo to the police. They were shocked, but without any concrete evidence, all they could do was make a note of it. But it wasn't over. That night, I heard noises downstairs in my house, like someone was walking around. I thought I was imagining it, but the sound got louder and I could hear a low whisper, repeating something I couldn't understand. I grabbed the camera and crept downstairs. Through the night vision, I saw a blurry figure in the living room. It was Danny. His face still had that eerie smile, his eyes hollow as if waiting for me. His lips moved, and the whisper came from him like he was calling me. I screamed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished instantly. The feeling of being watched hasn't left me since. I know that those things are still out there somewhere watching me. And that camera, I've never had the courage to look at the last few recordings.